Do you feel like you've been priced out of Canggu or just sick of the traffic and tourists? Let me introduce you to my neighborhood where expats and locals live side by side, Kerobokan. Hey everyone, my name is Adrian Field and I'm an expat entrepreneur who's been living in Bali for the past 4 years. So if you're not that familiar with Bali, the very first thing you might be wondering is, well, where is Kerobokan? Kerobokan is located in the south of Bali, in between Canggu and Seminyak. Just south of Canggu, it runs between Jalan Raya Kerobokan and Jalan Raya Seminyak. It's a mostly locals and expats area that lacks the notoriety of its famous neighbors. Now when I talk about Kerobokan as a neighborhood, I'm really referring to the small section that's along Jalan Raya Seminyak that's really adjacent to Umalas. Like, we're basically Umalas. But Kerobokan, it continues down on Jalan Raya Kerobokan, basically almost what starts to feel like Denpasar. Like, it starts to feel really industrial. You have the Hotel Kerobokan, which is ironically named for the jail where a lot of foreigners end up if they get convicted for drug smuggling, things like that. That area, I'm not talking about. I'm really talking about when you go out of Jalan Raya Canggu, when you go past Barawa, and then you come into Jalan Raya Seminyak, there's a bunch of villas around that area. Again, then you have like Umalas somewhere around here. So we're very strategically located because we're basically on top of Umalas, and if there's not traffic on the Umalas shortcut, it's just a 5-minute motorbike ride into Barawa. So let me first tell you why I moved to this neighborhood. Now, I moved here from Canggu. I lived in Canggu for a bit over 2 years in a variety of different places, from guest houses to my own villa. But after a certain amount of time, I really felt like I needed more space. And another thing was that the traffic in Canggu was already getting really outrageous. So a lot of my life, other than the restaurants in Canggu, was outside of Canggu. That meant that I was in a lot of traffic, especially on the main road of Jalan Raya Canggu, if I needed to go to Denpasar, for example, to buy fabrics and do sourcing, or even at that point I was really getting into tennis, and my tennis club is in a place called Umalas, which is right next door to here. So every time I would come, for example, to this neighborhood to go play tennis, I would either be in traffic on Jalan Raya Canggu, or I would face death head on the crazy shortcut. Now, since then, the shortcut has been improved. They repaved the whole thing. And for a short while during the end of the pandemic, before the tourists came in and after the shortcut was repaved, it was a dream to drive on that. Now that all the tourists have returned, the shortcut is no longer a shortcut again, and there is massive traffic most times of the day going either to or from Canggu. So again, being that most of my life was starting to revolve around areas outside of Canggu, this was a much more strategic location for me. And again, what I got for my money here in this neighborhood was much better than what I could get in Canggu. Whereas Canggu prices generally, I think, are probably on a multiple of maybe 1.5 to 2 times higher than Kerobokan. Again, like, for the amount of money that I'm paying, I got a lot of house. So that brings me into the next point, which is really important, which is villa prices in general. I'm going to give you an overview in terms of what you might expect these days to pay in Canggu versus what you might expect to pay here in Kerobokan. So since I published my last video about Canggu, or Bali rather, not being as cheap as you might think it is, a lot of people have commented that my prices were actually underestimates on how expensive villas have become. And it's true, just prices are really out of control. Just the inflation of rental prices is actually staggering. So nowadays I'm seeing really in Canggu for 1 year's rent, you're looking at least 250 million rupiah per year, 300 million in some cases, 350 million in some cases if you want something that is really clean, new, and modern. So it's just gotten really, really crazy. In contrast, here in Kerobokan, you can still find some really good deals, especially if the villa is not brand new. For example, I'm gonna insert some video here of my friend's villa. She lives just basically up the street from me, also here in Kerobokan, and she pays 135 million rupiah per year. Now, she's been in this villa for several years, and her rent has never increased. I don't know what kind of magic she's worked on her landlord to not have an increase in rent, but that's an incredible deal. Now, her villa did not look this good when she first moved in. She happens to have a lot of skills, hands-on type of skills in terms of painting, in terms of decor, in terms of renovations. A lot of things that she did on her own or on very cheap. So the villa, looks much more beautiful than what you would probably find nowadays, just, ready to move in. So if you are handy, or if you are comfortable doing renovations, you can kind of find a diamond in the rough and really fix it up to your standards. Again, in the villa that I'm living in as well, when I moved into this place, it was not as nice as it is now. I did some general kind of renovations in terms of replacing light fixtures, replacing lamps, doing some repainting, etc., to get it to be more comfortable for me. Again, I think that in Kerobokan, I think that you can find generally around the 200 million rupiah mark, something decent if you pay upfront by the year. So let's talk about what Kerobokan specifically offers as a neighborhood. Now, why I like this is that I very rarely actually need to leave my home. There are a couple things that I still do in Canggu, but generally everything I can do right here in Kerobokan. So I have my gym just down the street. I have the tennis club also down the street from me, everything being kind of like within a 5-minute radius. And on the street leading to my tennis club, there are also a bunch of restaurants. And this area is kind of, I wouldn't say it's becoming hot because it's been around for a long time, but it is starting to develop more and more, get more restaurants, more kinds of trendy type things, and I really appreciate that. So even when I order, for example, from GoFood, or if I want to go out to eat, there's quite a lot of options to choose from. So let's talk about in general who Kerobokan as a neighborhood would be good for. I think that this is a great place for expats, people who are here long term, not just visiting, because one thing that this area does lack is like direct access to the beach. So if the beach is really important for you, then you might want to be in Canggu, you know, where you can just like basically drive down the road and you would get to a beach. Here though, you know, this is great for families. This is great for people who have business, maybe in Denpasar, or want to be able to go easily from here to Denpasar to Seminyak, etc. In that sense, it's much more strategically located than Canggu because you're already closer to those things. So you're eliminating all of the blockage and the traffic that comes even from just going from Canggu to this part or Canggu into Denpasar or whatever. This is not a great area for people who are really into the party scene. I mean, thankfully for me, you know, this is not a place where you go out and party. This is a place just where you live and you can have a nice villa and you can have a nice laid back lifestyle. So if you want to be really close to all of the party action, all the bar action, then it's much better for you to stay in Canggu or in Seminyak. Kerobokan just tends to be this little quiet kind of wedge in between those two neighborhoods. Another good thing to note about this neighborhood is that it's already pretty developed. Like Kerobokan has been here for a while. So there's not as much construction going on as there is in Canggu, where things are just getting developed at an extremely rapid pace. So in this area, for example, if you have a villa, you generally, most likely, I mean, you cannot say this is anything kind of rule in Bali, but generally you won't have to deal with construction noise. Almost every villa that I had lived in Bali, there was some construction going on nearby with another villa happening. So it's very, very rare to get a place in Bali that is quiet 100% of the time. I mean, even here, I've talked about before, I have a neighbor who plays music really loudly, who sings Indonesian karaoke. Another crazy thing is that I think that there's a new beach club that is like far away from here, but somehow the noise of that, I can feel the like thumping bass when I'm in bed at night. So Bali is just, you know, it has this reputation of being this really peaceful, laid back place, but it's really, unfortunately, in this area at large, anywhere that is around Canggu, that's around Seminyak, it's just like party central. So if you really want a totally quiet neighborhood, I would say don't stay around the beach. Go into Ubud, go into the jungle, go into other parts up the coast, you know, where things are still really, really laid back. But again, everything in Bali is just getting developed so quickly, and unfortunately, I would say not in the most sustainable or peaceful way. But again, Bali is a big island, so you can find everything if you just go off the beaten path. But again, for people who want to stay here long term and who want to be around or close to Canggu, but maybe not right in the madness, who want to be close to Denpasar, but obviously not live in the madness that's Denpasar, or, you know, not deal with all the tourist onslaught of Seminyak, Kerobokan just kind of seems to be the best of all of those worlds. And if you can find a villa here, you can still get a pretty good deal, much better than other parts that are super overdeveloped, super in demand like Canggu. So I'm really happy with my neighborhood. I really like living in Kerobokan. For me, this has been a great blessing to have found this place. I do think that I've become a little bit of a hermit just because life here actually tends to be really easy and I don't have to leave my neighborhood or even my villa for, quite frankly, for a lot of things. So if you're looking for a villa and you're interested in Kerobokan, I suggest that you look through the Facebook groups like Bali Housing. I suggest you could also reach out to an agent from Facebook. I mean, they're the ones who tend to know the best lay of the land of what's going on. Or if you're already here in Bali, you can just kind of show up to one of these real estate companies, and they tend to have a bunch of listings that they manage on yearly rentals and things like that. And you would just say, well, what do you have in the Kerobokan area? Again, it's not a place that people tend to ask for unless they know about it. So you kind of have to be a little bit in the know, and in that sense, again, great place for people who want to stay here a long time and don't want to pay through the nose for a villa rental. Well, that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful, and maybe I'll see you guys if you end up being my neighbor here in Kerobokan, though I am tending to get out of Bali pretty soon. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Until the next video, take care, and I'll see you later.